There is a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when your mind turns against you. It happens in the pause between one thought and the next. A tiny opening where nothing has gone wrong yet, but your brain begins building a storm anyway. You feel it as a tightening in the chest, a restless tension behind the eyes, a subtle pressure that whispers, something is about to go wrong. Do something. Think harder. Think more. So you do. You think, and think, and think again, until thinking becomes a trap. Most people never notice this shift. They assume they're processing, planning, trying to understand their life. But beneath the surface, something darker is happening. The mind is dragging them out of the present moment and into a psychological labyrinth where every step leads deeper into confusion. It's a silent war, the mind versus the moment. And in that war, overthinkers almost always lose. The irony is brutal. Overthinking gives the feeling of control, while quietly stealing every form of control you actually have. It steals your clarity, your energy, your confidence, your ability to decide. It makes you rehearse past mistakes, as if pain could be fixed by remembering it more vividly. It convinces you that worrying harder will create safety. It turns life into a prediction machine, one that never predicts anything correctly. What if I told you that most of your suffering doesn't come from what happens to you, but from your inability to stay where life actually happens? Eckhart Tolle calls this imprisonment the tyranny of psychological time. The mind obsessively projects into the future or digs its nails into the past, anything to avoid the simplicity of now. Because the now is confronting, it reveals truth, it strips illusions, it demands presence. And presence is something the overthinking mind fears. You've probably felt it. You're alone, at night. The room is still. The world is quiet, but your mind refuses to be. Thoughts start looping. Decisions from years ago echo back. Imagined futures rise like shadows on the wall. And you wonder, why can't I stop? What's wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. But your mind has taken the driver's seat of your life, and it's steering using the only tools it knows: fear, memory, and projection. The truth is unsettling, but it opens the door to liberation. Overthinking is not a personality trait. It's a pattern, and patterns can be broken. This video is about that break, about stepping out of the storm, not by fighting it, but by finally recognizing what the storm is made of: thought. The power you're looking for is not hidden in more strategies, more analysis, or more mental effort. It is hidden in the thing you've been avoiding your whole life: the present moment. The real enemy of the overthinking mind is not stress, fear, or uncertainty. It's something far more subtle, something so deeply woven into modern life that we barely recognize it as a problem at all. It is the illusion that thinking is the same as awareness. For most people, the mind is a constant narrator, commenting, judging, predicting, comparing, rewriting the past, forecasting the future. And somewhere along the way, they began to believe that this narrator is them, that their identity lives inside this non-stop mental noise. This is the invisible trap. You aren't overthinking because you are weak or emotional or undisciplined. You're overthinking because your brain has spent years, decades, equating mental activity with safety. It believes that the more it analyzes, the more it anticipates, the more it holds on to every memory and every possible scenario, the more protected you will be. But this is a primitive survival response disguised as intelligence. When Eckhart Tolle speaks about the pain body, he is describing this exact mechanism: a mind that feeds on unresolved emotions and uses thoughts as fuel. Overthinking isn't just a habit, it's a self-reinforcing loop. Every fearful thought creates emotional tension, and that emotional tension creates more thoughts. Round and round it goes until the loop becomes your default way of existing. The most dangerous part? You rarely notice when the loop begins. A harmless thought appears, a memory, a small worry, a question, then another, and another. And gradually the present moment disappears behind the fog of your inner narrative. You're no longer living your life. You're living inside your mind's simulation of it. This is why overthinking feels exhausting. You're carrying the weight of realities that don't exist. Yet this invisible mechanism has an even deeper consequence. It disconnects you from the only space where actual change happens, now. When you are lost in thought, you can't take action. You can't feel your intuition. You can't sense your body. You can't see opportunities. You can't hear the quiet signals that guide your decisions. You're stuck in what Tolle calls psychological time, and psychological time is a thief. It steals presence. It steals peace. It steals the simple clarity that life offers when we stop trying to mentally control it. And here is the revealing truth people avoid. Overthinking doesn't solve problems. It multiplies them. The mind creates imaginary futures and then treats them as threats. It resurrects old wounds, then reacts to them as if they're happening now. It predicts disasters, then forces you to prepare for battles that never come. And the more you play this game, the more powerless you feel, because you're fighting shadows with real emotional energy. If this is already opening something inside you, consider liking this video. It helps this channel reach more people who need this kind of clarity. There's a story Eckhart Tolle often hints at, a moment before the power of now existed, before millions saw him as a spiritual teacher. It was a night when he was simply a man trapped inside his own mind. He was 29, exhausted, depressed. His thoughts were loud, relentless, violent even. He describes it as living with a constant internal enemy. That night, he reached a breaking point. A single thought crossed his mind. I can't live with myself any longer. Most people read that as despair. But Tolle noticed something strange inside that sentence. If I can't live with myself, then who is the self I can't live with? Two identities inside one human being. Two voices. Two centers of experience. The moment he questioned that, his entire inner world cracked open. The tension collapsed. Thought lost its grip. And for the first time, silence filled the space where mental noise used to live. That silence became the foundation of everything he would teach afterward. But this concept didn't remain philosophical. It has been tested again and again in modern psychology. Take the famous white bear experiment conducted by Daniel Wegner. Participants were told, try not to think about a white bear. And the harder they tried, the more the bear dominated their mind. This proves something essential. Trying to control your thoughts strengthens them. Pushing thoughts away gives them power. Resisting the mind feeds the mind. Another study from Harvard followed individuals who spent long periods lost in thought, mentally replaying events, imagining scenarios, drifting away from the present. The results were surprising and incredibly aligned with Tolle's message. The more time people spent mind-wandering, the less happy they were, regardless of what they were doing. It didn't matter if they were working, relaxing, or even doing something enjoyable. Being trapped in thought reduced their well-being. Modern neuroscience echoes this. When the brain enters the default mode network, the region responsible for introspective thinking and narrative processing, it generates mental noise, often looping, repetitive, and anxiety-driven. Meditation, presence, and states of deep focus quiet this network almost instantly. This is why that simple question, who is the one thinking, feels like a door opening inside your mind. It interrupts the loop. It breaks the pattern. It pulls you back into the observer's seat. Life becomes clear again. And if you're fascinated by this hidden architecture of human behavior, subscribe to Inner Truth Lab so you don't miss the next insights. Here is the truth most people spend their entire lives avoiding. You don't have an overthinking problem. You have an identification problem. You are not suffering because your mind is active. You are suffering because you believe you are the mind. This is the core insight behind the power of now. And it is the psychological key that unlocks everything. Overthinking dissolves the moment you stop mistaking your thoughts for your identity. Let's go deeper. Every thought feels like you because it appears inside your internal space. It uses your voice. It sounds familiar. It carries memories, emotions, beliefs, fears, all of which convince you that the mind is the center of who you are. But this is an illusion created by constant mental engagement. The mind is not the author of your life. It is merely the narrator. And narrators do not experience reality. They comment on it. This is why, when you're fully present, overthinking collapses. Not because you force your mind to be silent, but because you return to the one place where the mind has no authority, the present moment. Thoughts are always about before or after. They cannot survive now. To the overthinking mind, the now is a threat. Why? Because the now exposes thought for what it is, a temporary mental event, not a truth. This is the profound shift Tolle experienced that night in his apartment, the realization that there are two of you, the thinker, the mechanical mind that loops, reacts, imagines, fears, the observer, the awareness that sees the thought arise. The thinker lives in time, the observer lives in presence. When you merge with the thinker, you drown in psychological time, regrets about the past, anxiety about the future, endless loops of analysis. When you rest in the observer, thoughts lose their emotional weight. They float by like passing clouds instead of storms. This is not a spiritual metaphor. It is a psychological mechanism. Awareness breaks identification. Identification creates suffering. Once you understand this, you stop trying to control your thoughts. You see them. You allow them. And in that allowing, they lose their grip. Imagine sitting by a river. If you jump into the water, the current drags you. If you sit on the bank and watch, the river flows without touching you. Your mind is that river. Your awareness is the bank. This is why the simple act of noticing your thoughts, not analyzing, not judging, just noticing, is so powerful. It creates a moment of space, and inside that space, the loop breaks. It's not that your mind becomes quieter. It's that you stop feeding it. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever noticed this pattern in yourself or someone else? Your perspective may help someone reading. Understanding the mechanism is powerful, but transformation only happens when insight becomes practice. When the idea of presence turns into something you can actually do in the middle of an ordinary day, during an anxious night, or in the seconds before your mind begins to spin a story you can't escape. Here are the practices that bring you back to the now, not as a concept, but as an experience. 1. The 3-second interrupt. Before a thought becomes a spiral, it always begins as a spark, a small mental movement. The moment you feel that spark, pause for 3 seconds, not to think, not to analyze, just to feel. Feel your breath, feel your hands, feel the weight of your body. This tiny pause interrupts the loop before it solidifies. Many people underestimate it, but this is precisely how you train your brain to return to presence. You remind it gently that you are here, not in your mind's imaginary time. 2. Label the thought softly. When a thought appears, don't fight it, don't judge it, don't follow it. Just label it. Thought. Not my thought, not my problem, not this means something. Just thought. This single word pulls you away from identification. You stop being inside the story and become the observer of it. And as you repeat this over days and weeks, your brain learns a new response, spacing from thoughts instead of merging with them. 3. Return to the senses. Presence lives through the senses. The mind lives through stories. When you feel anxious or overwhelmed, shift your attention to what you can see, hear, touch, smell, or taste. It doesn't matter what it is. The texture of your clothes, the sound of a distant car, the coolness of a glass of water. This is not a distraction technique. It is a neurological reset. It forces the brain to leave the default mode network, the network responsible for overthinking, and return to direct sensory experience. 4. Use the body as an anchor. Whenever your thoughts become loud, ask one simple question. What part of my body is tense right now? Bring awareness to that spot. Don't try to relax it, just feel it. Awareness dissolves tension more effectively than effort. The body is always in the present. When you feel it, you return to now. 5. The 10-second breath. 1 slow inhale, 1 slow exhale. 10 seconds total. This is enough to break the mental current. Enough to interrupt the storm, enough to give your awareness space to step back into the driver's seat. Don't underestimate small practices. Change doesn't happen in dramatic moments. It happens through dozens of tiny returns to presence each day. 6. Recognize the loop. When it begins, the mind has patterns, same thoughts, same fears, same emotional triggers. Overthinking becomes predictable once you start watching it, and predictability gives you power, because you can choose not to follow the loop. 7. Practice allowing not controlling. The paradox is real. Thoughts lose power when you stop trying to push them away. Allow them. Observe them. Let them pass. This is how you reclaim your mind, by refusing to enter the fight your thoughts are trying to start. If any of these steps hit you deeply, let me know in the comments. Have you seen yourself in these patterns? Your insight might help someone else break their own loop. Before you step fully into this journey of presence, there is an uncomfortable truth you need to hear. A truth many people misunderstand when they first encounter Eckhart Tolle's teachings. Presence is powerful, but it is not an escape, and it is not a shield against life itself. One of the dangers of learning to detach from the mind is believing that detachment alone solves everything. Some people use being present as a way to avoid decisions, avoid responsibility, avoid conflict, or avoid the discomfort of growth. They confuse passivity with peace. They mistake numbness for enlightenment. This is not presence. This is avoidance wearing a spiritual mask. The point of dissolving overthinking is not to float through life without boundaries or direction. It is to see life clearly enough to act with intelligence. When you become present, you don't disconnect from life. You reconnect to it. You perceive situations as they are, not through the distortions of fear, memory, or fantasy. And this clarity comes with responsibility, because once you see your patterns, you can no longer pretend you don't. Once you recognize the loop, you can't unknow it. Once you observe the mind's excuses lose their strength. Awareness demands maturity. It also demands honesty. Presence is not about silencing your thoughts forever. That would be another form of resistance. Presence is about breaking identification, not erasing cognition. Your mind still has a function. It helps you analyze, plan, execute, create. The goal is not to eliminate thought. The goal is to stop being controlled by it. Here's the ethical danger. When you first taste the peace of presence, you may feel superior, calmer, clearer, above the chaos of others. This is the ego's final trick. The ego can weaponize spirituality just as easily as it weaponizes fear or ambition. It whispers, "Look how awakened you are compared to them." But that voice is the same mind you're learning to disidentify from. Presence is not a pedestal. It is a practice. The deeper you go into awareness, the more humility you gain, not the other way around. You begin to see that every person trapped in their thoughts is suffering in the same way you once were. Their reactions, their fears, their anger, their confusion, all of it comes from identification with mental noise. And instead of judging them, you develop compassion. Another ethical warning. Presence will reveal things about your life that you may not want to face. You may realize that a relationship is built on old wounds, not love. You may notice that your job is draining your soul. You may see that your ambitions are built on insecurity, not purpose. You may discover that the story you tell about yourself is not true anymore. Awareness doesn't just dissolve overthinking. It exposes reality, and reality requires courage. Presence will not make your life easier. It makes it real. It strips illusions. It calls out your patterns. It shows you what must change. The danger is pretending not to see it. This is why you must approach awareness not as a trick to feel better, but as a discipline, a way of meeting life without distortion. The reward is immense, but the responsibility is real. There is a moment, subtle, almost sacred, when presence returns. Sometimes it comes quietly, like a soft breath after hours of tension. Sometimes it arrives suddenly, like a curtain being pulled back from your mind. But when it comes, everything changes. You begin to notice small things first. The way light falls across a room, the faint rhythm of your heartbeat, the feeling of your feet touching the ground, the gentle silence underneath all your thoughts. And in that silence you realize something profound. Life was never as chaotic as your mind made it seem. The storms were internal. The weight was internal. The noise, the confusion, the endless loops, all of it was happening inside a world of thought, not inside reality itself. Presence doesn't solve your problems for you, but it gives you something far more valuable, a mind that no longer multiplies them. It gives you space to think clearly, space to feel without drowning, space to choose your responses instead of reacting automatically, space to notice the difference between what is true and what is simply imagined. You start to see life the way a lake sees the sky. When the waters are still, the reflection is perfect. But when the waters are shaking in every direction, the lake reflects nothing clearly at all. Most people live in the shaking, not because they want to, but because they never learned how to stop. So they live in psychological time, dragging the past into the present, projecting the future into every decision, drowning in waves created by their own thoughts. And yet, the world of now waits just beyond that turbulence, quiet, patient, always available. This is the invitation Eckhart Tolle extended through The Power of Now, to come home, not to an idea, not to a belief, but to your own awareness, the only place you have ever truly existed. And when you taste this state, even for a few seconds, you understand something that no book or teacher can fully explain. The present moment is not empty. It's alive. It's full. It's enough. You don't lose yourself in presence. You find yourself there. You begin to trust silence more than fear. You begin to trust experience more than imagination. You begin to trust life, not blindly, not passively, but consciously, from a place within you that the mind cannot touch. As days pass, you notice that the storms return less frequently. The loops feel weaker. Your reactions soften. Your decisions sharpen. Life feels less like something happening to you and more like something happening with you. And slowly, you begin to understand that peace was never something to chase. It was something to uncover, beneath the noise, beneath the stories, beneath the mind's constant insistence that something is missing. The now is not a destination. It is not a skill. It is not a technique. The now is simply the place you land when you finally stop running. If you let it, presence will reshape you. Not dramatically, not loudly, but steadily. The way dawn turns into morning. Quietly, gently, inevitably. And one day, without noticing when it happened, you'll look back at your old patterns, the overthinking, the emotional loops, the restless spirals, and you'll feel something unexpected. Not shame, not regret, but gratitude. Because without those storms, you would never have learned how to stand in the calm. In the end, the mind is a tool. Awareness is the one who uses it. And the now is the ground beneath both. This journey is yours. Walk it with clarity. Walk it with presence. Walk it with the quiet confidence of someone who has finally returned to themselves. And let the mind, at last, be at peace.